Hello and welcome to this video on the classification of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is any violence that targets individuals or groups based on their gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation. It includes physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse, as well as discrimination, harassment, and coercion. Gender-based violence is a global problem that affects millions of people every year, especially women and girls. It has serious and lasting consequences for the health, well-being, and dignity of survivors, as well as for their families, communities, and societies. Based violence? What are the different types, forms, and levels of violence that exist? In this video, we will explore some of the main ways to classify gender-based violence and some of the challenges and limitations of doing so. One way to classify gender-based violence is by the type of violence. This refers to the specific act or behavior that causes harm or suffering to the victim. There are many types of gender-based violence, but some of the most common and universally recognized ones are rape, non-consensual penetration, however slight, of the vagina, anus, or mouth with a penis or other body part. Also includes penetration of the vagina or anus with an object. Sexual assault, any form of non-consensual sexual contact that does not result in or include penetration. Examples include attempted rape, as well as unwanted kissing, fondling, or touching of genitalia and buttocks. Female genital mutilation, cutting, is also considered a form of sexual assault. Physical assault, an act of physical violence that is not sexual in nature. Examples include hitting, slapping, choking, cutting, shoving, burning, shooting, or use of any weapons, acid attacks, or any other act that results in pain, discomfort, or injury. Forced marriage, the marriage of an individual against her or his will. Denial of resources, opportunities, or services, denial of rightful access to economic resources, assets, or livelihood opportunities, education, health, or other social services. Examples include a widow prevented from receiving an inheritance, earnings forcibly taken by an intimate partner or family member, a woman prevented from using contraceptives, a girl prevented from attending school, etc. Aiding or abetting an attempt, assisting, facilitating, or encouraging the commission of any of the above types of violence, or attempting to do so. Acceptable justifications for crimes, using any excuse or reason to justify or condone any of the above types of violence, such as culture, tradition, religion, honor, or provocation. These are some of the main types of gender-based violence, but there are also other types that may not be as widely recognized or reported, such as forced abortion, forced sterilization, sexual exploitation, trafficking, stalking, cyber violence, and others. Another way to classify gender-based violence is by the form of violence. This refers to the nature or mode of the violence, or how it is expressed or manifested. There are many forms of gender-based violence, but some of the most common ones are physical violence, any form of violence that causes physical harm or injury to the body. Examples include rape, sexual assault, physical assault, female genital mutilation, cutting, forced abortion, forced sterilization, etc. Psychological violence, any form of violence that causes mental or emotional harm or distress to the mind. Examples include threats, intimidation, coercion, manipulation, blackmail, isolation, humiliation, etc. Sexual violence, any form of violence that violates the sexual autonomy, integrity, or dignity of the person. Examples include rape, sexual assault, sexual exploitation, sexual harassment, etc. Economic violence, any form of violence that deprives or limits the access to or control over economic resources, assets, or opportunities. Examples include denial of resources, opportunities, or services, confiscation or destruction of property, withholding or stealing of income, etc. Sociocultural violence, any form of violence that discriminates, excludes, or oppresses the person based on their social or cultural identity or characteristics. Examples include forced marriage, honor-based violence, female infanticide, femicide, etc. These are some of the main forms of gender-based violence, but there are also other forms that may overlap or intersect with them, such as political violence, religious violence, environmental violence, and others. A third way to classify gender-based violence is by the level of violence. This refers to the context or setting in which the violence occurs, or who is involved or responsible for the violence. There are many levels of gender-based violence, but some of the most common ones are: individual level, the violence occurs between individuals, such as intimate partners, family members, friends, acquaintances, strangers, etc. Examples include domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, rape, etc. Interpersonal level, the violence occurs within a group or a community, such as peers, colleagues, neighbors, etc. Examples include sexual harassment, bullying, mob violence, etc. Institutional level, the violence occurs within or by an organization or an institution, such as a school, a workplace, a hospital, a prison, a religious group, etc. Examples include discrimination, exploitation, abuse, neglect, etc. Societal level, the violence occurs within or by a society or a state, such as a country, a region, a culture, a political system, etc. Examples include war, conflict, genocide, terrorism, etc. These are some of the main levels of gender-based violence, but there are also other levels that may influence or interact with them, such as the global level, the transnational level, the historical level, and others. These are some of the main ways to classify gender-based violence, but there are also other ways that may use different criteria or dimensions, such as the frequency, the severity, the duration, the motivation, the impact, or the response to the violence. However, no matter how we classify gender-based violence, we should always remember that it is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that cannot be reduced to simple categories or labels. Each case of gender-based violence is unique and has its own context, causes, and consequences. Therefore, we should always respect and listen to the voices and experiences of the survivors and provide them with the support and assistance they need and deserve.